My name's Clark Salisbury. I'm the fourth kid in line to Sean, a sharp corporate attorney, and Jenna, who's always been the picture of dedication as a nurse. Now at 48, I find myself often revisiting a defining moment that rocked our family to its foundation. It was late in my junior year of high school when I threw a wrench in their carefully laid plans. I told my parents I didn't want to go to college. It was as if an earthquake had ripped through our living room. My usually talkative folks sat in stunned silence before that shock turned into a full-force campaign to get me back in line, making those last months at home feel like a pressure cooker. College wasn't just expected for us Salisbury kids. It was practically a rule. As if that wasn't enough, my parents took matters into their own hands, secretly sending applications to 6 top-tier universities on my behalf. I got into every single one of them, which only tightened the tension in our house. Everyone except my grandfather, Logan Salisbury, believed that college was the only path forward. Logan was a different breed, though, and he'd been my ally since I was a kid. By the time I turned 13, I was spending every school break working right alongside him. Long before flipping houses was a buzzword, Logan had been snatching up rundown homes, fixing them up, and selling them for impressive profits. This wasn't just work. It was hands-on training in both business and craftsmanship. By the spring of my junior year, Logan and I had already flipped 2 properties together. That summer, I got a crash course in coordinating contractors, electricians, plumbers, and painters to make sure each job was done right. While my classmates spent their summers flipping burgers, I was flipping houses. 2 days before Labor Day, I sold that second property, netting $10,000 in profit after splitting the earnings with Logan. The next summer, I managed to flip 3 more houses. Logan insisted that I set up my own financing this time, though he agreed to co-sign. He took 25% of the profits, and even then, I had more money in the bank than most 17-year-olds could imagine. Though I did well in school and genuinely enjoyed learning, I knew deep down that college wasn't my path. After plenty of arguments, we reached a compromise. I'd take a gap year to focus on my construction business, and if needed, we'd discuss college the following year. So while my friends were lining up part-time jobs and prepping for freshman year, I was steering a different course. I bought an old Ford F-150 with over 120,000 miles on it, grabbed a simple cell phone, and started Salisbury construction. I reached out to every real estate agent I could, explaining the kind of properties I wanted to buy and promising to use them for both buying and selling. That's how I crossed paths with the Hancock sisters. Paige and Dakota Hancock had just graduated college and were fresh faces in the real estate world, working as associates at a national firm's local branch. I was already handling renovations on 2 properties when Dakota unexpectedly reached out. "Hi Clark, it's Dakota Hancock. I found a house in West Hartford that sounds like it might be a good fit." Interested in taking a look, Logan had drilled into me the importance of acting fast when opportunity strikes. So within 90 minutes, I was standing outside a modest ranch house, probably built in the 50s. Dakota explained it was an estate sale. The elderly couple who'd owned it had passed away, and their kids, living out west, were eager to sell quickly and settle up. The place was solid structurally, but seriously needed some updates. "So, what do you think they'd accept?" I asked her. Dakota thought it over. "This one's going to move quickly, but I think we'll be close to the asking price. $89,000. I trusted her gut, so I put in an offer. $85, $500 cash. But I want 5 days for due diligence and a closing within 5 days of the inspection if everything checks out." Dakota looked thrilled. We went back to her office, drafted the offer, and sent it over. The seller accepted in no time. The inspection came back clean, and a week later, the deal was done. "Let's celebrate," Dakota said with a spark in her eye as we left the attorney's office. She invited me back to her place, saying, "I share an apartment with my sister just a couple of miles from here. Come over for a drink." Following her to a well-decorated 3rd-floor apartment on the edge of downtown West Hartford, I accepted the glass of Merlot she handed me. We toasted quietly and took a sip, and then Dakota leaned in with a playful smile. "Hope you're up for celebrating in a few other ways," she murmured. Logan had always been blunt about certain realities in the real estate business, not all of them directly related to buying houses. Female agents, he'd once told me, tend to appreciate contractors who bring repeat business. If I were younger and not tied down to your grandma, I'd take advantage of some of those extra bonuses they offer. When Dakota leaned in for that kiss, it was bold and unhesitating. Her lips pressed against mine, soft at first, then more forceful, her tongue slipping past mine. I set down my glass, reaching a hand to her back, feeling the firm strength in her hips. That night was intense, wilder than anything I'd experienced before. At 18, I'd had my fair share of awkward backseat moments with high school dates, along with a few friends with benefits arrangements, including one with a 43-year-old married real estate agent who had taught me a thing or two. But Dakota? She was something else entirely, and her sister Paige turned out to be just as bold. The next few years flew by, and with them, my business surged. When I showed my parents my financials after that first year, even they couldn't deny that college wasn't necessary for me. They might have been disappointed at first, but once they saw the success I was building in real estate, they put their support behind me for good. By my second full year running the business, I was flipping between 12 to 15 houses every year. I'd also begun eyeing small apartment buildings, usually around 6 to 12 units each. The idea was to renovate each apartment as tenants moved out, holding onto the property to generate steady rental income. It didn't take long to realize the hassle that came with managing rentals, though. I had no intention of dealing with broken pipes or midnight calls about leaking faucets, so I quickly hired a property management company to handle all those late-night headaches. Around this time, both Dakota and Paige got married, only a couple of months apart. I attended each of their weddings, figuring our wild nights with the two sisters were finally in the past. By the time I hit 24, I was firmly settled in my career. So when the Hancock sisters invited me to dinner along with their new husbands, I accepted. That night, I met their younger sister, Alexis. Fresh out of college, Alexis had been teaching at an elementary school in Hartford for about a year. She'd earned a swimming scholarship during her college years, and you could tell by looking at her. Standing taller than her sisters at about 5 feet 9 inches, with long, athletic legs, she had striking red hair and hazel eyes that seemed to light up her entire face. But it was more than just her looks that had me interested. She was genuine, intelligent, and had an easy laugh that made me feel like we'd known each other for years. We hit it off over dinner, and I was thrilled when she agreed to let me drive her home afterward. On the way, Alexis suggested we grab some coffee to keep talking before heading back to her parents' place. At a quiet table over steaming mugs, she got straight to the point. "Look," she began, "you seem like a good guy, and in a different situation, I think I'd like to get to know you better." "I'd love that," I said, my interest piqued. "What's stopping you?" She took a moment before replying. "I know you've been friends with my sisters for a while, and I know what they're like. I'm pretty sure they've cheated on their husbands." I stayed quiet, sensing she had more to say. "I won't ask if you've ever been with either of them," she went on. "But if we were to start seeing each other, even exclusively, you couldn't have anything to do with them. That would be a deal breaker." Without hesitation, I agreed. "That's fair." She hesitated again before adding, "And I'm not like them, just so you know. I'm no saint, but I don't just jump into bed with anyone. There haven't been many guys, only the ones I was serious about." I nodded, appreciating her honesty. Alexis and I started seeing each other, and by our fourth date, I invited her over to my place for a private dinner. When I pulled up to her parents' house to pick her up, she looked surprised. I'd left behind the condo I'd been living in. For years ago, Logan and Grandma Salisbury had both passed away within weeks of each other, leaving generous wills that reflected Logan's years in real estate. I inherited their old farmhouse along with a barn and 73 acres, set in a quiet rural town just 20 minutes outside of Hartford. The property was lush, covered with fruit trees, berry bushes, and sprawling vegetable gardens. I'd been renting the farmland to a local farmer to cover most of the upkeep costs, so I didn't have to dip into my own pocket to maintain the place. It took me almost a year to decide to renovate the 30-year-old farmhouse and barn, and then another 2 years to complete the overhaul. When the work was finally finished, the house was a blend of classic and modern. The exterior kept its timeless farmhouse charm, while the inside was open and ultramodern. I transformed the barn as well, installing concrete floors, a large garage and storage space, even setting up a personal gym in one corner. It was also home to Salisbury Real Estate and Construction, but let's be honest, it was mostly a man cave. The company was a one-man show. I'd buy, rehab, and either sell or lease properties, subcontracting the heavy work and bringing in agents, attorneys, or financial advisors when needed. As I showed Alexis around, I could tell she was impressed, but she seemed equally impressed by the lasagna, asparagus, and salad I'd prepared for dinner. We dined outside on the patio, enjoying wine and conversation under the stars until the candles finally burned out. After a pause in our conversation, I decided to ask her something that had been on my mind. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course," she said with a smile. "I've really enjoyed my time with you," I started, feeling a bit nervous. "I'd like to spend even more time together. Would you consider being exclusive?" She smiled, and for a second, my heart lifted, but then her expression changed, and I felt a pang of dread as she said, "I need to think about it." Then her smile returned, and she laughed. "I've thought about it long enough. It's about time you asked." With that, she jumped onto my lap and kissed me. We slowly made our way upstairs, taking our time with every step. Each kiss, each touch felt deliberate, like we were savoring every moment. By the time we reached the bedroom, I was certain I'd found the right woman. Alexis had the same passion for intimacy as her sisters, but unlike them, she wanted that part of the relationship to be just ours. Not long after Alexis and I got engaged, her dad, Aaron, took me out for a beer. We'd always gotten along, but I knew there was a bit of distance between us, partly because I hadn't gone to college. He didn't beat around the bush. "Clark, I like you. A lot. Actually, but I think it'd be wise for you and Alexis to sign a prenup. Have you two talked about that yet?" I shook my head. "No, we haven't." He nodded and pushed a manila folder across the table. "I had my lawyer draft something straightforward. It's just 2 pages. In the event of a divorce, each of you would keep whatever you brought into the marriage. Alexis would hold on to her teaching salary, and you'd keep your business assets. For the kids, the courts would determine child support, but both of you would contribute $5,000 each year toward a college fund." The terms seemed reasonable, so I told Aaron, "I don't see any issues with this, but I'll have my lawyer go over it. I'll get it back to you in a week." Alexis and I got married at the end of her second school year, and we spent a blissful 2 weeks on our honeymoon in the Caribbean. Our first daughter, Elise, was born 9 months later, followed by Kara 16 months after that, and then our youngest, Vanessa, 2.5 years later. Life seemed good during those years. While Alexis juggled her teaching career, working toward a master's degree in education and certification in school administration, my business was taking on a new direction. With the rise of the internet, I decided to shift away from renovating local properties and began searching for distressed vacation properties along the northeast coast and ski regions in Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, and upstate New York. After thorough research, I'd buy these properties and sell them to buyers looking to handle their own renovations. This new strategy was known as wholesale flipping. While the profit margin per property was lower than my traditional flips, the sheer volume of deals more than made up for it. Where I used to handle 12 to 15 flips a year, I was now averaging around 75 to 100 wholesale flips annually. Alongside this, I continued building my portfolio of residential apartments, eventually owning 18 buildings totaling 124 units. My solid reputation in a cutthroat industry helped me become a partner in a lending group funding other property flippers. We quickly became one of the top firms across the Northeast. The best part of this transition was how much less time my work required. I no longer had to put in those grueling 60-hour weeks, constantly rushing between renovation sites. Now, I could handle my responsibilities in about 20 to 30 hours a week, freeing me up to focus more on family life. My typical day started early. I'd be up by 4 a.m. to fit in an hour of exercise before making breakfast for Alexis and the kids. I took pride in preparing healthy lunches and seeing the kids off on the school bus. From about 7:30 a.m. to 1 p.m., I'd work on my business, checking in with contacts, reviewing loan reports, and handling day-to-day tasks. Most afternoons, I'd be done and ready to dive into after-school activities, coaching sports, taking the kids to dance, helping with homework, and cooking dinner. I felt incredibly fortunate. My career was thriving, yet I could still be a hands-on dad. While my workload was lightening up, Alexis's career was taking off. She'd moved out of the classroom and into administration, starting as a middle school vice principal, then principal at an elementary school, followed by a high school vice principal role. Eventually, she rose to the position of assistant superintendent in our town, all within 6 years. Her new roles came with a growing list of responsibilities, often involving late nights at school events, council meetings, and board gatherings. Despite her hectic schedule, I felt proud of the positive impact she was making in our community. I took on more household tasks willingly, knowing how much her job meant to her. Even with everything going on, we made sure to carve out time for each other. By our 12th anniversary, we still had a healthy, active relationship, sharing intimate moments 3 or 4 times a week. Despite the chaos of our lives, we were in a good place, both physically and emotionally. But our first serious challenge had actually popped up years earlier, during our 3rd year of marriage. I remember it like it was yesterday. It was Valentine's Day, and we were at our favorite restaurant, sharing dessert. Out of nowhere, Alexis leaned in and said, "I want to ask you something, and I'd like you to keep an open mind." The way she said it rubbed me the wrong way, and I felt a flicker of irritation. "When have I ever been closed-minded with you?" asked. She rolled her eyes. "I just think there's a small chance you'll get upset." "Well," I said, my sarcasm creeping in. "After booking this place and giving you a diamond pendant, now's obviously the perfect time to bring up something that might upset me, right?" "Oh, come on, Clark." She sighed, exasperated. I said it's a small chance. Trying to ease the tension, I raised a hand. "All right, just say what's on your mind." She gave me a hard look before continuing. "Dakota and Paige have been taking a 5-day cruise every spring. This year, they picked one that falls during my spring break. I'd like to go with them." I laughed. "And what about that would upset me?" "Sounds great. Where are we headed?" But her face darkened instantly. "No, you don't get it. It's an all-girls trip. Just us 3. I took a long, slow sip of wine, keeping my eyes on her. "What exactly are you asking me?" She scrunched up her face. "What do you mean?" "Well, you started this by saying you had a question. So, what's the question here?" After a pause, she gathered her thoughts. "I guess I'm asking if you're okay with me going." I gave her a broad smile. "That's easy." "No, I'm not okay with it. And frankly, I'm surprised you even feel the need to ask." Her face flushed with irritation. "What's wrong with me going on a trip with my sisters?" she asked, a mix of indignation and confusion in her voice. "As you know very well, Dakota and Paige have always had a certain reputation. They were like that when we started dating, and it's not like anything's changed, especially after both their marriages went up in flames due to their infidelity. Your sisters are basically magnets for trouble, and that's exactly why I don't want you going on a cruise with them." "So, you don't trust me?" Alexis's voice was getting louder. "That's not the issue. The issue is whether I'm comfortable with you taking off for a week to party, drink, and parade around in bikinis with your 2 trouble-attracting sisters. I'm not okay with it." Alexis took a deep breath, clearly fighting to stay calm. "You can't tell me I can't go." I met her eyes. "That's not what we're talking about either. What we're discussing is how I feel about you leaving your family behind for a week just to spend time with your sisters, who, let's be honest, aren't exactly model citizens." With a frustrated sigh, she replied, "I really wish you'd stop calling them that." I shrugged. "And I really wish they didn't have the cheating reputations they do." Right as the argument was heating up, the waiter returned to check on our dessert. We both agreed it was fine. And then she said, "Our final course is a glass of our award-winning plum wine. Should I bring it out?" Before Alexis could respond, I shook my head. "No, thanks," I said, pulling out my credit card. "Please run this with a 20% tip and bring the receipt." Suddenly, Alexis's irritation flared into full-blown anger. "We will be staying for the wine," she snapped at the waiter. "And yes, we'll take it now." "Thank you." I gave her a smile and added, "Go ahead, bring her wine and make it 2 glasses for her. Once you've run the card, bring it to my wife and kindly call her a cab." The waiter's eyes widened, sensing the tension. I tossed my napkin on the table, stood up, and went to retrieve my jacket. I walked outside, started the car, and looked at the clock. I give Alexis exactly 3 minutes to settle the bill and meet me in the parking lot. She made it out with only seconds to spare. As she got in the car, she glared at me, furious. "Don't you ever embarrass me like that again. Do you understand?" I drove in silence for half a mile before finally responding, calm and composed. We just had a discussion where you told me I couldn't stop you from going on a cruise with your sisters. By the same logic, you can't stop me from embarrassing you in public when I see fit. She sat there, speechless. I had never spoken to Alexis like that before, and she must have sensed it was best to hold her tongue for the rest of the ride home. When we finally got there, she stormed straight into the house, but I veered off and headed upstairs to my office. "Where are you going?" "We're not finished talking," she yelled from the doorway, her voice sharp. "Get back in here now." I was halfway up the stairs when I stopped, turned, and shot back. "Who do you think you're talking to? Don't ever tell me what to do again." She froze, her eyes wide, while I slammed the office door behind me. For the next several weeks, our home felt like a Cold War zone, tense and frigid, with most nights spent in separate spaces, me often on the office couch. Then, just 4 days before her planned departure, Alexis came to find me in my office. "Can we talk?" she asked, her voice softer, cautious. "Sure," I replied, motioning for her to take a seat. She settled down gingerly, as if bracing for an explosion. There was a long, almost unbearable silence while she gathered her words. "I don't want to leave with you still angry at me," she started. I shrugged. "There's a simple way to fix that." She frowned. "Clark, I'm going on the cruise." "That's final." Her words hung in the air, and I took a moment to process what felt like the end of the discussion before responding. "Mind if I say a few things?" She gave a reluctant nod, clearly not thrilled but allowing me to speak. "This is the first time in our marriage that I've genuinely been concerned about us." I began. "It's the first time I'm afraid that your choices could be what finally breaks us." "That's not fair, Clark," she protested, her face hardening. "You really think I'd cheat on you? Right here, right now?" "No, I don't think you plan on it," I admitted. "But once you're out there, surrounded by booze, late nights, and strangers on a boat, things can spiral fast. 3 attractive women in that kind of setting attract attention. Things escalate. And when 2 of those women have a history like your sisters, Alexis, deep down, you know I'm not wrong." She started to argue back but stopped, a faint blush coloring her cheeks as she realized I wasn't entirely off base. I didn't let it go. "It's not just about sex either. I'm worried about a lot of things. Are you going to be flirting? Dancing close with some guy while his hands are on your hips? Letting strangers rub sunscreen on you by the pool? Clark, that's absurd." She snapped. "I'm not going to do any of that. And even if something did happen, it wouldn't mean we'd get divorced." I gave her a look that must have unsettled her. "Why won't you do those things?" "Because I'm married," she answered defensively. "A married woman can't just do that with another man. But if something happens by mistake, it doesn't mean we're instantly headed for divorce." I shook my head. "We're going in circles, Alexis. You're not taking seriously how strongly I feel about this. If you do anything inappropriate and I find out, I'm not going to be worried about your feelings. I'll do what's best for me and for our daughters. And that might very well mean divorce." Her face went pale. "I can't believe you'd even bring up divorce. And I can't believe this cruise has brought us to this point." I replied sharply. Taking a deep breath, I continued. "Look, I've made peace with the fact that you're going. I'm not happy about it, but fine. I hope you and the girls have a great time. But let's be clear. If you cross the line and I find out, I won't hesitate. I'll end things." Alexis sat there in silence, absorbing my words. When I saw tears start to form in her eyes, I was caught off guard. She abruptly stood, stormed to the door, and threw one last remark over her shoulder. "I'm not planning to do anything wrong." The morning of her departure, we sat around the kitchen table finishing breakfast. The girls chatted excitedly about their plans for the week while Alexis checked the time. At exactly 8 a.m., she turned to me and said, "We need to go." I told Dakota we'd pick her up at 8:30 and Paige at 9. "We?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. She looked at me as though the answer was obvious. "Of course. You're driving us to the airport." I shook my head. "Alexis? I've got conference calls at 8:30, 9 o'clock, and 9:45. I'm heading to my office." Her expression darkened with a mix of confusion and anger. What kind of husband doesn't drive his wife to the airport? The kind who won't support this trip in any way. I called back over my shoulder. Turning to the girls, I added, please clean up the table and counters before you watch TV. A few weeks later, on a Friday afternoon in late April, I was wrapping up a conference call when something unusual caught my attention. Alexis' car came speeding into the driveway with Paige's right behind it. I watched from my office window as Alexis jumped out, followed by Paige and Dakota. What's so important? Paige called out, sounding impatient. Shoo. Alexis hissed. Let's go inside. I don't want Clark to overhear. Curiosity got the better of me. Ending my call early, I opened the home security app on my phone and switched to the camera feed covering the kitchen. I watched as the three of them came through the back door. Alexis poured wine for her sisters. Aren't you having any? Dakota asked, noticing that Alexis hadn't poured herself a glass. Alexis hesitated. I can't. I'm on antibiotics. Antibiotics? Paige asked. What's wrong? Alexis' voice dropped, but I could still hear her clearly. One of the guys I slept with gave me gonorrhea. Paige's jaw dropped. Have you given it to Clark? No. Alexis snapped. He's very angry after I got back from the cruise, so we don't sleep together for a couple weeks. Dakota looked shocked. So, when will your doctor inform Clark? Alexis shook her head. I don't think they will. I went to a walk-in clinic in Albany, paid cash, and told them I was single. I even said the only sex I'd had in 6 months was with strangers on the cruise. I had to give them the cruise line info and the first names of the guys I slept with. They're supposed to try to track down whoever passed it to me. I stood there, my phone still in my hand, stunned as the reality of her confession washed over me. That was all I needed to hear. Shutting off the app, I walked over to my bookshelf, took out a bottle of Knob Creek, and poured myself a glass. I sat down at my desk, taking a slow sip as the weight of it all settled in. Somehow, it felt like I'd been subconsciously preparing for this moment for years. Each step of ending my marriage already mapped out in my mind. I wasn't angry. I felt almost numb, but I knew I had to act. My focus now was on protecting myself and, above all, my daughters. Without any hesitation, I picked up the phone and called my personal attorney. I instructed him to start drafting the divorce papers and to make sure the prenuptial agreement would hold. I was clear that I wanted to keep the house, which had come down from my grandfather, and as the primary caregiver, I would be seeking full custody of the girls. My attorney assured me that custody likely wouldn't be a battle. To be cautious, he also prepared a second petition citing infidelity, ready to use if needed. Alexis and I had always kept separate finances, a decision we'd made early on in case my business ventures ever went south. We each contributed equally to household expenses, but maintained our own accounts. That afternoon, I canceled our 2 joint credit cards and cleared any remaining balance from the household budget account. About half an hour after hearing Alexis's confession, I finished my drink and joined the girls in the kitchen, where they were chatting and laughing with their aunts. Alexis glanced at me and asked, "Rough day, honey?" I nodded, taking my usual spot at the end of the table. "Yeah, real rough." Everyone turned to me, curious. Before I could say anything more, the front door opened and Elise walked in, her best friend's mom having dropped her off. She bounced into the kitchen, dishing out hugs all around, even for her aunts, whom she hadn't seen since their recent cruise. The conversation shifted to Elise's.